got pretty heated at one point. I remember where this creator wanted to do a certain story, and I had warned them that this probably would maybe pretty offensive and should probably be pivoted to another thing. I'm trying to be very vague here.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Making Manga Podcast Saturday FM of Saturday AM. You know how we getting the cool name connections. You know we cooked with that. But this is Whyt Manga, Editors, the creator, writer, and illustrator of Apple Black, co-founder of Saturday AM, here with my colleagues. So introduce yourself.
Well, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah. My name is Jeyodin. I'm the creator and artist of Hammer. I'm also the artist on the Rick and Morty manga being published by Oni Press.
I'm Raymond Brown, the creator of Bully Eater, also a co-founder. Like I always say, just glad to be here.
Glad to be here.
And I'm Austin Harvey Eunice, the less impressive of the group, managing editor and story writer.
Editor-in-chief.
Oh, thanks, pal.
Austin to be scared of, forget us. You're trying to get with Saturday AM. Austin is your final boss or your mid boss.
You gotta talk to him. Yes.
Yeah.
Austin's drawings. He doesn't draw because he doesn't want to, blind you with euphoric goodness.
I've been banned by the state of law, and I don't even live in America. So
exactly.
Yeah. So we're having Austin here in today's episode, and then most likely probably a bunch of future episodes as well. High-ranking editor in Saturday AM. So if you're trying to sneak in, he's your way in. He'll sniff you out. Ain't that right?
Oh yeah. Definitely. I have a lot of people at my door. Knocking on my Instagram DMs.
Have you? What's the weirdest? Because I'm sure everybody here. It'd be nice to see what everybody has to say. But what's the weirdest, with regards to trying to join or share art to get feedback? What's the weirdest email DM you've gotten?
I think it's always kind of weird when I get an email where they ask me to look at things and hear them out and show them, or they want me to see what they're working on, and then getting onto that they have nothing to show.
You see, you get art in chapter 5. See that's art going to show up.
Exactly.
Blank.
Yeah.
But there's a super it needs to be blank for a long time.
Yeah.
They're in the void.
Yeah.
And they just want me to go. They just want me to go on this imagination journey with them.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's kind of a good point while we're on it, man. That's pretty common. People will want you to check out their stuff, but they're saying to their Instagram and there's nothing there. You know what I mean? It'll be pictures of them hanging out or, their favorite video game, but no real art or anything like that, So I do notice that, that's pretty regular. That happens pretty regularly.
Yeah. With the Summer of Manga, pitches, it's like every other 5 people, you see at least one that's hey guys. So,
yeah.
Have any of you guys gotten any weird messages as well?
I've gotten messages over the years, none that stand out that are hey, give me a chance, and then they don't show anything. It's usually one of the recent ones that I got was somebody basically wanting me to hire them as an assistant. I think that's what they were trying to say. Either that or they wanted me to hire them, pay them for commissions, not to be an assistant and work on my stuff, but they were hey, I draw, you should pay me so you can see my stuff, or something in that regard. And I was I'm good, but thank you,
They
man.
were good. Someone-
I appreciate the
I did get a DM of somebody like, "Oh, I do art. Sponsor me. Just give me money." That was it. That was really, and they followed up. It's like, hey, yeah, I'm just following up from my email last week about just giving me money. I'm like, what?
Just courtesy call here.
Yeah. Raymond, you got anything?
Not really. I mean, unfortunately, I'm not on the internet. Like I need to be like on social media more, but nah, I don't get nothing.
Yeah.
In that regard, all of my stories are like second hand. Like I get them from y'all, Fred, and So those are.
You can just mention a story you've heard.
Let me think. Well, I'll tell you one thing I did. We did an event. You remember when we went to a library event here in North Carolina, and I met these really cool guys that had a comic idea and stuff like that. They were talented, definitely great artists, but they were so secretive about the project. They were like, yeah, but we're not going to post it or anything like that because we want to make sure nobody take our idea or anything like that. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I hear you, but you gotta get to a point where you gotta put your stuff out there. If you really try to do this, you can't really treat it like it's like top secret.
Yeah.
So
how do we know to care if
not
showing anything?
Hopefully
you'll find out what's behind door number 1 as soon as you pay me.
That's right. But if you think about it, look, like, I mean, how unrealistic is that? Where you think like, okay, I'm going to go from like an idea that I have in my basement, not showing anybody, to like having a book and skipping all the stuff in between, like social media posting and all that stuff. That's a big jump if that's what you think is gonna happen.
Yeah, they don't know yet. They're. I think sometimes it takes a while to kind of. Because that's not the only thing that a new artist doesn't find out. I'm sure even us, there were things that as we got into it and tried certain things, we'll learn over time, right? And so they'll learn eventually. If they've not learned already, then that's not how it works, right? But there's a bunch of stuff that once you start to shoot, and then you learn, and then eventually, you just need to pray that you wake up sooner rather than later. It's not 10 years or 20 years later when you wake up or learn one thing. You need to learn a crap ton of stuff, and then the next time like if I go back, I don't even you remember last episode we were talking about if we could go back as babies and redo everything we had our brain. Yeah. I don't even need to go back because if I go back 10 years, I'll be cooking.
Bro, I'm a super villain if I go back in time 10 years. I am literally a super villain.
Austin would like be able to predict every artist that comes and tell them exactly what they're gonna say. Like all them shamans, like young grasshopper, sit down. I know 10 years in the future.
Here's why.
This idea sucks. This idea,
artists, they're like bouncing their whole body on the pencil, upside down, for training.
Have you given somebody editing feedback or any kind of feedback where they like got pissed
off? It got pretty heated at one point. I remember where this creator wanted to do a certain story, and I had warned them that this probably would maybe pretty offensive and should probably be pivoted to another thing. I'm trying to be very vague here, but
okay.
Yeah,
is this drama?
It's not exactly drama, but I don't want to dox anybody or make anybody feel bad. But at the time, it felt very offensive, and they were pretty adamant that it wasn't. And I had just made the suggestion that it's if we want to keep your story, with the message that you kind of want to keep, we could maybe come at it from this angle where you can cut that certain part out, and it doesn't feel as directed or some of that nature. They were pretty against that for some time, and it just came to the point where it's just like, listen, I just don't feel comfortable working on this, and then they just kind of went their separate ways. So
that's fair. That's one thing I say. sometimes it's not. Maybe your idea is the way, but it's not the way with us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we trust you, and so whatever it is, I'm sure I'm on your side.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people be having the wildest ideas, like, oh, I'm gonna have all this blood and gore, and that in their head that equals maturity or something, or it equals quote unquote sanity, and they want to do it. Now maybe they're right, but good chance.
Yeah.
It was probably the safer route where they can give it a shot and believe in themselves, I guess, and themselves, but not with us. I guess we weren't willing to. That's what
yeah, and I think for the most part it's been pretty good. I think for some people it's hard to get the idea across that I am not against them, that I am on their team. I think for the most part most people get that. But when I make suggestions or when I'm trying to, help people, some people maybe take it the wrong way, like I am attacking their ideas or that sort of thing. And I'm really not. Like everything I say, and I say this at the beginning of usually every meeting I have with some people, where it's just like whatever I say is really just a suggestion, but my opinion does come from an educated experience from doing this for so long, and whether you take my ideas is up to you, but just know like I am here to help you. Like I'm not here to like watch you fail.
So Austin, I'm an artist. I've been doing this for 6 months, and I already know exactly how all 500 chapters of my manga are going to end. Why do I need an editor? Why do I need an editor?
You know exactly how your 500 chapters are going to end?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know how they exactly end. Yeah, and I got a real big action scene that's going to just like be a super plot twist in volume 26.
In volume 26, oh my god!
Nothing in any volume before that.
Yeah, you got to wait. You got to wait. But why do we benefit from editors as our creators?
So actually, that's a really good point that you just made. So I think that editors are supposed to, help the creator do things in a very entertaining way that maybe they are missing, or shorten things down and cut things down. So things that might be missed, like you just said, where you might have 500 chapters already planned out. Well, some of that might not be necessary to be 500 chapters. You might need that action scene that comes out in volume 26 to actually come out in chapter 1. So that, your audience could be really entertained and to actually continue this. This all seems pretty simple when you say it out loud, but it really, like, it would be surprised to know that, like, how many people do actually try to push a lot of their good stuff to later chapters, later volumes, because they're building up that excitement. Whereas, maybe that would have worked in the 60s or the 70s and possibly the 80s. But now where we have like so much content in 2025, believe it or not, that was, we're 50 years older than what we used to do. Entertainment has come a long way, and you'll see it a lot now with a lot of successful things that like just, hit you with the explosions right away in chapter 1.
You're actually you're not just competing with comics anymore. You're competing with everything. You're competing with even people going outdoors to play soccer. Everybody has a decision to make, whether to sit down and consume your stuff or do something else. And that something else could be spend your money elsewhere if your stuff has a wall, so which makes it even more difficult, or another movie, or picking your book off the shelf versus the other book that's in the alphabetical order next to yours. There is like you're in constant competition, whether you admit it or not. So I would even say a lot of successful, especially in entertainment, properties, people, film, all that, there is an element of luck there as well. So
exactly.
You definitely want to give yourself all the opportunity in the world. And I think if you're in this space, you should at least understand the value of an editor by now. You probably should watched maybe Bakuman, or there's been a lot of creator type comic shows. Jay, you've you've worked with other companies, like Oni Press and stuff like that. What's your experience working with editors?
I've had a few editors from Oni Press. And on one hand, it just kind of depends on what the project is. Their main focus, or at least in my capacity, the main focus has been, deadline. When are you going to meet this? How far have you gotten? Obviously when it comes to the invoices and all that, that's when I'm messaging them. I need my money. It's stuff like that. Saturday AM is unique in the sense that it's coming from a different angle of giving more ideas. In my scenario, I have not worked with my own project with Oni Press. I've always been an artist or even a colorist on one of the projects, so it was never them bouncing off ideas with me. That's something that I think they would do, but I just haven't had that experience yet. Yeah. But for Austin, I do actually have another question. How if I was a brand new artist, Raymond was saying, and I have this epic in my head, and you were my editor, and you got me to change my mind, and we were able to start working on this project. How often do we usually meet? What is a schedule in your head for something like that?
That's a really good question. I think it, like you said, it kind of depends on deadlines, right? I would say a good starting point would probably be, once a week, especially if you have a depending on the deadline that you have. If it's a really, really tight deadline, I would probably want to check in, even meeting once a week. But if you have a really tight deadline, maybe checking in every couple of days to be okay, deadline's fast approaching. How's this going? Depending on how long you may have, a week feels good. Checking in every once in a week, because it reminds not just you, but it reminds me. It reminds everybody who's working on the project to kind of be okay, did I say I was going to do something last week? Did I meet that point that I was going to do? Did I actually do that? And did I communicate effectively if I didn't meet that? So if I was supposed to do 2 pages last time that I met with Austin, did I do those 2 pages? I did only 1.5. Well, crap. Maybe I should communicate with him before our meeting that Austin, it was a really busy week this week. I was only able to do 1.5 pages. I'm a very understanding guy. I get it. Life is busy, but it's, at least having that meeting once a week, setting goals so that it reminds both of us, what I'm expecting of you, what you are telling me you can do, and how we move forward from there.
Yeah, it keeps you kind of easy to touch base, and it keeps progress of the project, moving in that direction. At least definitely moving, because you can easily see a case where you guys don't meet for 2 months and then nothing is done. It almost those 2 months were wasted. So it depends. I've always viewed the editorial role as a somewhat flexible role, right? It depends on the company, like Jay said, depends on the project. I think there's some editors that maybe they're there mostly for just the visuals, more of a visual editor. Maybe from a writing standpoint, maybe your deal with the company, whatever the case may be, they don't really have. They can give suggestions, but you control it, right? Sometimes there's situations where there is no editor, right? So someone like Tony, we talked about it actually, and he doesn't really have people. He doesn't have that kind of. I'm sure they're editors, but they don't have that much say in what happens with Radiant, for instance. So I think it's a case-by-case basis, on what the editor is focused on. So sometimes it's visual, sometimes it's narrative, So it's just from a narrative standpoint. Sometimes it's technical from a narrative standpoint, maybe grammar or whatever, and sometimes it's technical from a visual standpoint. Making sure that at 180 you're not doing some amateurish things visually, and maybe that editor has so much experience looking at things where they know what to look for. And sometimes it's a combination of both. Sometimes it's all of that and or just a managerial type of thing where, like you said, it's focused on deadlines. Like there's like in Japan, which I think is a combination of all of them if we're looking at certain companies like Shonen Jump, or even just looking at some of the shows that they've put out where, they can even be you know what, make sure you finish, I'm going to get you coffee, I'm going to go buy this, I'm going to drive here, I'm going to draw, you need some reference, you want to know how to draw this building, come, let's drive, I'll drive. So it's almost like there's like mentorship, there is a personal assistantness to it, even though they don't necessarily work for you, they work for the company. So it just kind of depends on the host of things. So it's always good to kind of know what kind of editor you're dealing with, and again, some of the ways that the editor rolls and what they look for is powered by that company and what that company stands for. And that's like situations where maybe your idea is great, but it's just not a good fit for the particular company in question. So I think the editorial world is somewhat flexible in its definition. So you need to, in a lot of cases, if you are dealing with, you need to have a strong understanding of what they are. Like even with some of those stuff I've done, I've worked not necessarily as an editor, I was an art director for Sandstorm, and there were some things I found myself doing that was very visual editor standpoint, even though it was titled art director. But I found myself in some of those roles, even from a narrative standpoint as well. But I think overall, my job was also to make sure that the deadline was met. You're calling, and then you see that in Japan as well. You're calling the artist or going to his house, make sure he's, you know what I mean. So the editor, what an editor is, what they do, all of that is somewhat flexible. But the goal at the end of the day is that this extra wise man on your team, a wise person on your team to help you and the company or the publisher or whatever get to the end game.
And I kind of like that you brought that up, because I feel like, at least from my point of view or my position, I actually have done pretty much like everything that you've said, like all those kind of roles. However, it's actually interesting that you say like each editor can be like different, whereas I've like kind of tried everything in the editorial kind of realm. I've been experienced in all of that, and it's funny because I feel like where that comes out, like the type of editor that I become, actually depends on the artist that I'm working with, because it depends on what they need as an individual and as a creator. What do I think that they need the most support on? And don't get me wrong, I'm my own individual. Like I'm sure I'm stronger in certain areas of editorial than others. Like I definitely probably wouldn't be as good of a visual and like design editor that maybe like you three would be, because you guys are actually like strong artists. Like Whyt, you've done it. You're a strong artist. Jay's a strong artist. You've created your strong artist, Raymond. You've done Bully Eater. You guys have your own series. So in terms of having editorial advice for like page layouts, designs, I would say that you guys are probably stronger in that sense, but doesn't mean that I couldn't give that expertise. I couldn't give my input on that, what I think would be good. And I have done that.
Yeah. And I know we've run some ideas past each other on a host of projects. So definitely, right? And I think it's good for you as well, because you get to play in all kinds of fields and become better, and maybe even help potential editors, move coming in to be part of the team, and you can kind of like edit them.
Yeah, exactly.
Editor.
Like an editing pyramid scheme. There you go.
It's like edit section.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question. So, like, all right, like we touched on a little bit earlier, but like, like attention spans are pretty short. Not short, but I hate to say it that way. But people have a lot of things going on. They don't have a lot of time to commit to, a long drawn out story. So what are some things that you could do as an artist? Say you're coming up with your first story. What are some of the things that you can do to really, jumpstart people? Get people into your stuff right away. Like, what are some techniques, or maybe even some things you may have seen in other comics that are like, that get it started right away. It hooks people right away and get them going.
That's a really good question. I've actually been in practice with and I've read the Iraqi book. It's the JoJo creator. I'm not sure if you guys have read it yourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been in real good practice of like trying to come up with like one. Yeah, there it is, in all its upside down glory.
Yeah, I think Iraqi would appreciate that.
Yeah. He mentions in some part, and it's actually been really sticking with me for these past couple of years, about like how editors in Japan would look at the first page of a manga and immediately open it up and either flip the page or put it away, put it down, and not look at it anymore. And like how impactful a first page can be.
It's harsh.
And
I remember reading something like that.
Yeah, and like that's really harsh. It's really harsh, and that really stuck with me, because at first I was just like, man, there's no way they're that picky and stuff like that. But I went and I did some some educational digging into like mangas with like first pages. I would go to Naruto's first page in chapter 1. I'll go to Bleach's first page in chapter 2 or chapter 1, and just I'll look through like all the chapter 1s of like really popular shonen manga, or like not even just shonen, but like manga in general, and just see how like their first pages go, like what is the tone that they set with that. And one of the most recent ones that I saw was Death Notes, and I went to go look at that, like just the duality between like light and the earth, like with the sun shining on him, and Ryuk like looking at over the Shinigami realm, and it's all death and decay, and they're both saying that this it's boring, this world is boring, or something like that, or it's rotten. Sorry, it's not boring, it's rotten. Both of them are saying it's rotten.
Yeah. That's very interesting, and that you say that. I have not got it, and I've been wanting to get it. But I do remember, like, just thinking about all the Shonen Jump manga that I've read. Like, you'll see, like, Toriko, for example, it'll explain, like, the food arc or the food era that they're in, gourmet food. They just, like, show all the food and all that. Or, like, for Naruto, it was the Nine-Tails Fox.
Yeah,
exactly.
For One Piece, it was Gold Roger. Like, I mean, you're 100% correct, and I can totally see how they would be like immediately turned on or turned off by the first page. Like, that makes a lot of sense. That's a really good tip.
Yeah, because if I remember, the Naruto first page is like that explanation of the fox and stuff, right?
Exactly.
But I'm sure that so exposition is one way, but sometimes exposition, you don't want to linger on there too long, right? And so I don't think they linger on there too long. I'll say 4 pages max, but like 1 page a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And it just depends on the world and what you're trying to do. And sometimes maybe the exposition, depending on how you're delivering that, it could be 4, it could be longer. So maybe,
I'm looking at Death Note right now, and I mean, Death Note's first page, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 panels of exposition. That's it.
Yeah, so
that's it.
And the anime had like that really cool thing where it would kind of throw in the rules every couple times, like with the theme of like trying to explain the rules of the book. And I can imagine, because you don't need to explain all the rules in episode 1, because you don't deal with all the rules. You just work what audience needs for that time being. But I think what I'm leading to is those ones do some exposition stuff, but obviously not all of them do that, right? So there's some cases where you can have a strong first page, second page, first 7 pages. That is the point is to, grab them in some interesting way, show them something maybe they haven't seen before, and that's how you get a little bit of an era of things where, where certain series it almost feels like they have a formula, but then you go to a different generation of things, and then you start to see that formula a different, maybe a newer one. Or you see how in this era there's a lot of like demonish series, right?
Yeah.
Which, maybe it's a bit of a resurgence because they've always been that, but it's been a lot more like darker themed shonen stuff going on. And I can't remember, but I'm thinking about what their first pages was. But ultimately, all I'm saying is it doesn't necessarily have to be exposition. It could,
Mm-hmm.
but the point is it just needs to be something that grabs the audience in.
Yeah, like even Bakuman, it was just what's his name drawing, and then his uncle came in and said, "Oh, you might be a manga artist one day," and then it was the double
That's it. Yeah.
Maybe the editor had just never seen anything else like it that day. And
Mm-hmm.
you know what?
That's a good exercise to do. I mean, I would encourage it. I mean, I'm doing it now as we speak. I'm on Demon Slayer right now, and like again, it's not like Whyt said. It's not a lot of exposition, like because I've seen that in the past sometimes where you just get one full page of just dialogue, and it's like and you expect somebody to read all that. Whereas Demon Slayer, like you just see him carrying his sister. She's clearly injured. He's like, "Please don't die on me," and
Exactly.
you just know. I mean, like it's like we talked about last week on one of the previous video about pitching. Like people either like it or they won't, and both answers are okay. Like that first page is a pitching away. And people either be into it, they're like, "Oh man, nah, that's not me," and they're out, or they're like, "Oh man, I'm turning the page for sure."
Yeah. So sometimes you can throw the people in there, but still not make sure they. I don't know. It depends. There isn't. Again, with all of this is art, right? So it's a little bit subjective. There isn't one way of doing anything. You can do something that's never been done before and it will work, right? So, but at the same time, to be on the safe side, usually, you can't throw people, in like I think even in the animes like Don't Die on Me, and then they do a flashback to get to kind of show everything that did happen. So there are many ways to do it. You can show like a flash forward and then come back to regular time. You can do an exposition-y thing to set up the world a little bit, but I think the trouble you can run into there is maybe you're giving off too much information that you don't need, which is even an issue I used to have back in the day. So you could give off more information that's necessary, but because you still the execution, the idea and what you're planning to do might be good, but the execution needs to be on point and you need to still keep them engaged. A lot of there was a time back when I was like trying to redo some of the older stuff and fix some of like the older Apple Black stuff again, because it's like, okay, I want you to get into the series. I want to make sure that the beginning is the best it can possibly be. Luckily, it's stood the test of time for the most part, right? And there were certain things I wanted to like improve, but there's something I kept, right? So one of the things people do a lot is like when they're starting a series, their character is waking up, right? The idea is that there are some things that are kind of cliche, but what I also learned while learning that is that the idea is not to then not do it, because there are ways to do it and it not be like there are ways to do it with the execution where it works. Some of the greatest series that are recent, I'm not talking about very old stuff, that are recent, are things that are kind of like a dream sequence or the character waking up, but it works maybe for that particular project because maybe it's on brand with it. Like Neo waking up, we see him waking up next to his computer. It's still somebody waking up and the computer, all that wake up stuff. I bring it up because this influence of mine, but it worked for the Matrix because of the Matrix, right? And the sequence right before it was kind of dreamy because it was showing a lot of unrealistic things that we've never seen for the first time with that whole Trinity opening, or Inception, also about dreams. And so just because the idea of a character, can you, Jay, do you say something?
No, I was agreeing with you. I think.
So Inception, it's about dreams. So again, depending on how you do it. Now, if you just did it where Leonardo just woke up, there are ways you can do it where the audience can feel the drag of it. Of like, oh, okay, I've seen this. But you can do certain things just because it's a cliche doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. There's nothing you're about to do that hasn't been done before, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So the execution sometimes is very important, and if it's on brand with what you do have going on with the series, if it matches certain themes. So sometimes you see some people like, oh, that's cliche, but it's like, or another one where it's like, oh, that was predictable. Sometimes I don't mind predictable.
Yeah.
Right? And you see some people, they'll try and subvert your expectation, but it's like what you're subverting it to is not as interesting as what you could have just easily done. You know what I mean? And it would have worked better. And even if it's there are so. Do you know how many romance stories I don't even read romance, and I know exactly what's going to happen, but it still works. Why?
It still
It
does.
doesn't work. You might as well not break it. Just
You know what I mean? It still works, and so it's like a fine balance where you should sometimes think outside the box, and you could give birth to something completely fresh. But then there's also where it's like you don't think outside the box just for the sake of thinking outside the box, and just because something is kind of cliche doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. So I know the waking up one or starting off as a dream. I know I did that in Apple Black, and I remember when I was like, "Oh, do I want to fix that?" But I was like, I saw what I was planning, and I was like, you know what, a little tweak here and there, and that's actually what I want to do. But there are many ways to start a story in an interesting way. The exposition, all the things we've talked about, and I recommend people go look at a bunch of other series. You see, sometimes they'll start off the series in a way that introduces the characters and the world a little bit. Maybe if it's like a bunch of people who kill demons, maybe you start them off during a mission, right? And maybe during that mission you can do. There's a bunch of stuff, right? And Thunderbolts started off kind of that way with the
Marvel
character, the Yelena character during the mission. But again, the idea of starting a series during action, one could argue, is also cliche. But again, they did it in a way that worked for them, right? Because she was also, spoiler alert, I'm not really spoiling much of the movie, but she was also kind of talking about how she's bored, very definitely a little bit, but how she's also bored and looking for a purpose in life with the people she was beating up, which, that's typical, the usual Marvel humor. But again, it was on brand for what they were trying to do. I think the visual of like when somebody opens your stuff, like what they see visually plays a role. Art and story are both important, and I think story is very, very important. But a lot of times, when people try to underplay art, sometimes art can get people to the table, and in some cases, if it's really good art, it'll keep them there too. Maybe not for too long, but it'll keep them there for a while. The story truly is what keeps them there. But if the art's like really good, if you flip that page and you just see something it just sends you somewhere, I think that's also important. But I'd love to hear more from what you guys think. Like, what would you say is the best, the most impactful first set of pages you guys have seen?
It's a good question.
Even from like not just from like it doesn't have to be stuff from Japan, and like even submissions on Summer of Manga, which we would kind of pivot to pretty soon. Just anything. And I'm thinking most impactful first pages. I don't think I didn't read Dr. Stone, but I don't know. I don't know why that popped in my head, but I didn't read it. But
that was good.
Yeah,
that was pretty good. Because it definitely, Dr. Stone in particular kind of subverted your expectations and thinking that you're going to follow the one guy that's like, I'm, in love with this one girl. Yeah. And then you find out that it's the, scientist after about 20. I mean, obviously you're with the scientist for the entire 20 chapters, but all around the 20th chapter is when you're like, okay, you're the main character. Like we're just following you. So, I totally agree with that. I think in my opinion, what?
Attack on Titan?
Attack on Titan started off with them in the woods. And, they're on horses, fighting the Titans, running away, right?
Is that how it started? I thought it started with
well, the anime started different from the manga, so like.
Oh, okay.
Because I get them confused because the manga starts out with them basically like. I'll be honest with you. I don't think if I've read the manga, it's been a long time ago.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, it was them in the woods running away on horses. They defeated a Titan, and then when they come home, the walls go up, and you see Aaron and everybody else, and they're all kids looking like, "Oh man, that's what I want to do." And then his mom gets eaten 10 pages later.
I'll tell you a real ballsy one that really did it in a real subtle way. Yu Yu Hakusho, because they really killed Yusuke in the first, I think, page or two. Died. Yeah, that was. We take it for granted now because the story's so old, but think about that back in the 90s where manga always started pretty much
your main character.
In the first 2 pages, it's like, whoa. From the break. That's probably one that stands out to me.
I remember Attack on Titan, even when it did that, then it did a little bit of a flash forward, didn't it? of like it will show Colossal Titan grab the one of the walls.
I think that was a double page spread.
Yeah, like so. Yeah. There was a page early on that is like, what am I looking at? And it's kind of like it was almost like just there to be like, don't go anywhere. Now let's go back to the regular story.
Right. Yeah. Another one comes to mind, My Hero Academia, actually, because not even in the necessary visuals, but in the premise. Because in the first page, they tell you that the whole world is born with superpowers.
Yeah.
Except for Deku. And it's like, oh, what? Huh? So our main character, the only cat that don't have superpowers, how this going to work out?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that's also, even without seeing that, to me, that's one of those where even without seeing the visuals of it, just hearing the story, that's a good hook.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're hey, I'm telling about this story. It's kind of like X-Men, but the main character we're following, he's like he's part of the X-Men. He's doing it, but he ain't got no powers.
Yeah.
Right, it's like, okay, so it's like they're like, okay, wait, is he like Batman? He has money? No, he broke.
Just a regular dude. Just a regular dude.
And so it's like from a pitching without the art, there is an appeal there. I'm not up to date with My Hero. I know there's some people who I've heard some complaints that the story, as the story goes on, it goes away from that and like
goes away pretty quickly.
Yeah, Deku's
he don't know about power.
One of the strongest.
He's written powers, but the powers are banging. The powers he's written are good.
Yeah. So
if Deku was more like Batman throughout the entire series, it would have been such a drastically more dangerous world.
Yeah.
Like it would have been way more interesting.
But I'm not gonna lie, that would be that'd be hard to write because I think about the interview with Kishimoto, and he was talking about how he hates writing Shikamaru because Shikamaru's like a genius and he's so smart, and he's like, man, I can't come up with smart crap for him to do. So having to do that for an entire manga run, that would be crazy. So I see why. That's
why what's it called? A lot of people sometimes they'll say I think people generally like Naruto as a main character, but some people bring up Rock Lee. Mm-hmm. Now Rock Lee's kind of Deku, but Rock Lee wouldn't have been that difficult to write because they did give him something. They gave him enormous hard work, and they gave him taijutsu, right? So it's like, he still kind of has powers technically, visually he's still. They're trying to sell it all he knows is taijutsu, but he's still flying around the place. He's still like the Flash in a way, right? But if they wanted to market it his jutsu is speed, you would have just taken it as his jutsu is speed. But it was presented to you as, oh no, he can't do any jutsu. It's just taijutsu. So it's still it still works, even though it kind of doesn't work. He is still superpower pretty much. He still got pretty much look like Goku during that
manga magic.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, he don't have powers, but my man can wrap you up with mayonnaise, large air, crash and still live. You know?
Yeah. So
okay, I get you. He can't make clones, but okay.
Yeah, he can't. I get, but that's what I'm saying, right? It still worked because we understand there's a lot of things that all the ninjas could do that they're just telling us, this guy can't do it, but he has hands, and that was different enough from everybody else, and you could already imagine all the obstacles he would have to go through. To me, Rock Lee Gaara is still one of the best fight, if not the best fight in Naruto. To me,
it's iconic.
Yeah. So to me, because of that, a lot of times some people would have maybe not preferred, but they would have loved Rock Lee as a main character type. In fact, Naruto was a little bit like that in the beginning. He couldn't do anything, but it was by the end of the chapter he was.
To give Rock Lee his respect, he did get his own spin-off series, so people did care enough to get him. The chibi one, yeah.
Well, it's funny I mentioned Naruto because I'm actually rereading it now, and you can see because I'm kind of speed reading it because I know the story, but as I'm reading through it, you can see where it changed. It went from being like they had to be really creative to beat bad guys to it just becoming Battle of the Gods, literally. So bringing it back to Austin for a second, how do you because I know what happens with a lot of artists is that, they don't look at Naruto as they say, okay, I want to make a story like Naruto or whatever, or Bleach or One Piece or whatever. But they're not looking at the build up from chapter 1 up to chapter maybe 50 or whatever. They're looking at like the end game, like this battle right here. Like, so how do you rein that in where someone comes to you and say, Austin, like, I got all these ideas. I want to do this. I want to do that. It's like, whoa, slow down, buddy. Let's get you to chapter 1 first.
Yeah, it's definitely tough because I do get a lot of people that want to create like their series, their magnum opus. And even when I try to like box people in, and that's basically what you have to do. You have to kind of create like this box for them to kind of work in their space to somewhat get what they want. It's usually like, well, then it doesn't like feel like it's my story magnum opus anymore, and it's just like, well, yeah, no, it's not. It really isn't.
No, it's more realistic. This is
happen. And I mean that exactly, and it's the way that I try to do this, and like a one shot's a really good way of doing this. Whether it's like 5 pages, 10 pages, 20 pages, a limit helps because it's not testing you, showing people your concept. It's the way I look at a one shot is like it's more like a proof of concept, a not a chapter 1, but more or less a pilot episode. So like a snippet of what an average episode of your series, if that's really what you want to do, what an average episode might look like. Because a lot of people want to do series, of course. Not all the time. I actually do get people that just do want to do a one shot, one and dones, and those are pretty simple and smooth. Yeah. But if you are a person that does want to create a series, then I would definitely say like looking at a one shot, whether it is like 2 pages, 5 pages, 10 pages, 20 pages. Think of it as a proof of concept, a pilot episode, an average episode of what your series would look like. If we're talking about Naruto, we're talking about ninja wizards at some point, like doing special cool effects. What does an average episode of Naruto look like? And you could think about like the first thing I think about is actually Kakashi's battle with like Zabuza and stuff like that. His very first one. Even though it really doesn't devolve back to like those hand signs that they were doing for like a straight 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But like that is definitely the first thing I think of like when I think about a proof of concept, or like a pilot episode of a series or like a one shot that you need to do.
So awesome. Let's give somebody their flowers. Summer manga person, or what is a story that stands out to you that's come through our ranks, in recent years that kind of, they're not out the park for that one shot from all the things you look for.
Oh, I get. I'm gonna be mad if people are gonna be mad at me if I don't mention theirs. Okay, there's a few. There's definitely a few. Actually, the first one that I think did really well, especially for a 10-page one shot, was actually Angie. Pharaoh Draws. It was just a 10-page one shot. At first, she kind of wanted to like lengthen it a bit and make it longer. If you guys remember the one shot, it was about a skater that finds a zombie and that the zombie wants its brain back.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. At first, it was just. At first, she wanted to kind of do it where the brain was spread out into 3 different pieces, and they have to go on different ththings. And I just brought that back where it's just like, okay, well, if you want this cat involved, why don't we just make it, the cat, and then just one piece with just one brain altogether. And, like that helped her rein it in, and that made it a simpler story, and people really dug it. Like I remember getting, receiving a lot of compliments on the one shot for Angie, and it was really good. Another one, in the same year, actually, 2 people that got really a lot of good comments was V for Scarlet Vagabond, and we got a very talented artist, Adam Gorky. He worked on The Curse of Kamamori for a horror manga. Yeah. They got both of those artists were really well received for their one shots. They really enjoyed it. And I think both of them were really strong. And
I remember that year. That was that year, either that year or the year before or the year after that. But that window, there were a lot of really strong
Exactly.
Really strong, both visually, narratively. There were a lot of really strong ones.
Like even last year, thinking about the ones from last year, obviously our winner was Goldie, who got the $1,000 and the contract to work on something professional with Battle Quest Comics. But the divide, and if you go back to the judging video for those who are watching,
it was
like the divide between all of the judges was tense. And obviously, me being an editor, I don't get to vote. I just get to sit there and be like, "Ooh, what's going to go?"
Yeah.
So it was tough. Like it was not a unanimous decision. There was a lot of people that were like, a lot of our judges were kind of like very split, and literally like Goldie. And this is not this is still a testament to how good she was. She literally only won by one extra vote.
Yeah.
And that was how tight that race was.
Shout out to Goldie. He's actually helping me with something right now.
Oh yeah, no way.
Yeah, because it's like and we'll talk about this. We'll have a better breakdown right after this. In fact, we're gonna do like a breakdown so the people watching know exactly what Summer of Manga is, what they get out of it. I'm actually thinking maybe in the future we add like a certificate for finishing, something they can like be proud of, right? Like go out and like, oh, part of this manga program that kind of helps develop, right? I think like somewhat of a certificate. But
we should start an award like the Tessica Award, but the Saturday AM Award, or
something like that, right?
That'd be awesome.
And so it's not just winning it, but just being a part of it, right? And getting that experience, I think, is valuable to. It's like a badge, a badge worthy of bringing up. But where you go from Summer of Manga, whether you win it or not, whether you just get the quote unquote certificate. You could end up being in the magazine. You could end up going off doing your own thing with this newfound information. You could go off, just being a designer. There's so much, like the pathway or funnel or whatever, the flow of how you go kind of depends on you and, what your talents are and what you want to do and yada, yada, yada. But one of the things that you could do is a manga assistant, which Goldie is for me. Which is great. So it was cool when she won. I was like, oof, okay. It's nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
Because everything, all the argument, because I remember it was a really tough.
It really was.
There was, even just visually alone, it was a strong year. The funny thing is, I don't think it was even I don't think it's even the strongest year visually. There was a year. It was like a dream manga one year. I think it was the same year with the horror manga. Then there was like another French post-apocalyptic something, and there were like some really good ones. So
I think the year with Aquila, because like I really liked. I remember that. I mean, I might be. We did a story together, but I really liked that story a lot. And like the art was awesome, but like that entire issue was great. And I'm trying to remember another one. There was a
the one from Piggy Hammer. She did a sword, like a mighty sword and stuff like that. So that one, See, I know I'm gonna get flamed for not mentioning some because, but like,
I do hate it will be born.
The French one.
What you mentioned me on the video?
That's from the Goldie year. I think that came in second. I think.
Sorry, which one?
The one where it's like a police officer with a dog.
Oh, a dog with no name. I think something like that.
Because that's funny. There's like a no-name manga where it's about dogs as well.
Yeah, I will double check that, but
because I remember that one being strong. But while that's going on, can you just for the audience explain what Summer of Manga is, what they get out of it, and then what makes this year's Summer of Manga unique?
Yeah, so that's a very loaded question. But basically, what Summer of Manga is the chance for creators that get selected to create a one-shot story, whether it be usually between 10 to 20 pages. And we usually say the max 20 because with the time limit, it's hard enough doing pages as it is. But yeah, having that limitation is important. So Summer of Manga is kind of like
creativity too.
Correct. It's it's like a mini trial into or a mini window, I should say, into what like creating comics and manga is actually like. Because you are working with an editor a la me, or someone that we can get to work with you, and B, we you are given a deadline, you are given a page limit, and you have to complete those pages within the time limit and nail down your story and kind of work within that time frame. It's like a diet version of working on a story, right, in the industry.
How does one, like, what's the application process like? What do we ask for?
So we usually ask for your legal name, where you're from. We ask for a pitch of your idea. So, a famous one that we usually use is like Yu-Gi-Oh meets Batman. You want to kind of come up with like 2 series that like can give us a visual idea of what your story or character is about. A little bit of a story synopsis. I think you guys kind of already talked a little bit about that in your previous one with the pitch and synopsis. Mm-hmm. But synopsis about your story, very short, very brief. Please no 1-page essays on your story. And usually we would definitely like to see your portfolio so that we can kind of see what style it's about, and like what you can do versus what you're telling us. So that way, okay, this is what you're showing, this is what you're telling. We can kind of put that together in our own imaginations. Okay, this is what you're kind of going for.
Yeah. What about what's a red flag?
Not having a portfolio or anything to show. That being said,
order to see
it. Sorry, what'd you say, Jay?
You have to friend them on Instagram before you can even see it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because I can imagine sometimes some people are really good artists, but I don't see any comic pages, and I'm just like, okay, this is gonna be tough.
That's definitely a difference between being a sequential artist and an illustrator.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Like I can already tell sometimes. Sometimes you can be pleasantly surprised, but I would say like 7 times out of 10, they don't really know how to make comics like that, right? Mm-hmm. Like you can see the talent, and you can see that they're talented enough where they can definitely learn, and they like it's still good enough, but it's not as good as say they're one-off illustrations,
Mm-hmm. And to continue your question about what is different about this year. What's different about this year is actually we are kind of tying it all together to Saturday Wars, which is the book that you guys have worked really hard on. We have worked really hard on.
Yeah.
And it is coming out, but we wanted these Summer of Manga stories to actually kind of relate to what's going on in Saturday Wars. So if you have been reading the first 3 chapters that have been released online for free, you can kind of get a good idea of what's kind of going on. It's
Saturday, yeah.
Exactly. But it's definitely going to be interesting because it's going to take a character that you have created. How are they going to handle being alone? And then, how are they going to, tackle the problems that maybe will be faced through something like Saturday Wars. So it's going to be a very new experience this year, just to celebrate what Saturday Wars is about with Summer of Manga, with the different creators that we're getting in these applications. So I'm actually really excited to see it because it's kind of like a brand new spin on Summer of Manga can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah. I think that's genius, man. Like it takes me back to so I know maybe Jay, maybe I know I'm one of the main American comic book guys in our group, but back in the day they did X-Men Age of Apocalypse, basically. Are y'all familiar with that?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Age of Apocalypse, basically, long story short, a whole new universe opened up. Like something happened, whole new universe opened up. You got a whole different version of the X-Men, the Avengers, the whole Marvel universe. You got a whole new world, reimagining of them. And what was cool was that you had the main story, but you also had these breakouts, and that's what this is reminding me of. Like you had maybe everybody knows what was going on with like Gambit and Wolverine, all these guys, but there was a story just about Age of Apocalypse, Deadpool, and he was just kind of like, what did he do during the time where all this stuff went to chaos, and they had a bunch of different characters just like that. So I think it'll be really cool to see what people come up with and put their the MC in this crazy world that we are building in Saturday Wars. So
yeah, it'd be cool to just flipping through it, and just a plethora of different art styles, and how it's tied to the story and the wackiness of it. I can't wait for people to see what they get out of it. And obviously, if you win Saturday Summer of Manga, there are also some winnings, and prizes, and things like that. I'm not sure if you touched on it. I know last year was $1,000, and maybe there were some other things. And in the past, we've done like iPads and Apple Pencils. So we also try to reward the winners or honorable mentions in some fashion. I'm not 100% sure what this year's is, and I know there are still elements of this year's that I can't talk about right now, but they're still being negotiated that we can announce. That'd be like a really cool thing that will surprise everybody. But Summer of Manga is it's a great way to not necessarily go inside our Saturday AM magazine, but to kind of break into our network and see where you fit in, where it could be a book like. Zafe went through Summer of Manga and March Art Madness, and he has a manga out now, Volume 1, or Orisha, which is doing great. It looks great as well. I think it was a good read. I like a good plot twist, so that's in there if you like those. I thought that's pretty good. And there's been other artists as well. I believe Fred
Torninger. Jeffrey, yeah,
Fred
correct.
and Jeffrey, and so these are all people who had
even Morgan, right?
Morgan.
Yeah, now you mentioned it. Yeah,
I wasn't here during that time, but I vaguely remember Morgan being in Summer of Manga, right?
What was her Summer of Manga entry?
Wait, no, time out. No, she wasn't. I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
No,
Tony Dawkins. Was he one as well?
Tony Dawkins. Well,
Tony Dawkins, maybe.
Tony Dawkins, yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Because I know Morgan.
One of our poster children for Summer of Manga.
We clock Soul Beat out the gate. So, but as you guys can hear, there's like multiple artists who kind of applied through Summer of Manga, got in that way, and they found out where they lay, and it's a story that's still being written where we go. And Summer of Manga over the years has also gotten better and better and just improved on all fronts, and I think it's only going to continue depending on how things go this year. I think this year has potential to be the biggest year so far. So it's kind of like our annual summer event. We're celebrating manga and trying to bring opportunities for new creators within Saturday AM. And sometimes where that may lead to might not always be within Saturday AM. Sometimes you can take some of those experiences and go elsewhere, which is always great as well. We want everybody to kind of win however they can, as long as you're not going crazy on the internet or hurting people.
And just to expand that list a little bit further, we have like Stan Russell, who's worked on Zephyr, who's going
working on Zephyr. So there are people, there's more.
A digital release of Zephyr soon for Volume 1. We had Frank Simmons, who's done Falsehoods in Annual, but now is going to be working on something called Fanboy. Looking really exciting. And of course, we had V, who has actually worked with me, on a story called Zarka. So.
Yeah. And then there was I've forgotten his name, Lord Kato.
Oh, Prince also, worked on Enemy of Crime in the Annual book.
It's a pretty good thing where it's led to all kinds of opportunities as long as you're within our network, and it's worked out great. And you own your IP for the book, like pretty much, and all of that. If depending on how it's like, for instance, if this one is tied to Saturday War, you don't own Saturday Wars. Obviously, that's you know what I mean.
But you own your character.
You own all of that. So it's a great, fun experience. And this year, we're trying something different to celebrate Saturday Wars. And I can't wait to see, how it all comes together. I'm excited. I'm excited for that. And I think sometimes we'll have like a live review breakdown on the YouTube channel as well. So we'll see how that goes. Do you guys have Raymond, Jay, have any other things that you think we may have missed regarding Summer of Manga?
Only thing I'll end with is just you guys mentioned all those names. The one thing I can say all those guys have in common, Tony, uh, you know, everybody we mentioned earlier. I'm sorry, yeah, I can't get them all, but one thing they all had in common in my mind is godlike patience, man. All those guys, they've been at it for and girls, they've been at it for a while now. They understood that there was that stuff doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't always work out the way you pictured it in your mind. I know in your mind you think that, okay, I win summer manga, or I enter summer manga. Now it's time for me to have a book. It's like, it may not work out. Maybe you'll spend some time as an assistant, or maybe you'll get a gig inside of one of the books that we're doing. Whatever. Don't frown on that stuff or nothing. Hey, sometimes it just won't work out.
That is the reality,
and that's okay too. But yeah, I would just say, I think patience is patience and consistency is the secret sauce.
Yeah, for sure. I would also like to say, this particular summer manga, especially, I would definitely, read Saturday Wars. Like, there's 3 free chapters on our app. That'll definitely get you at least in the mindset of, what we're trying to, get you to implement inside of this story, or at least, help you craft a storyline for this summer of manga. But most importantly, even if like it doesn't work out, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not talented. It just means that it wasn't your time right now. Like, you're going up against everybody around the world that's submitting to this. Like, that doesn't mean that you're horrible. It just means that there was somebody else that was a little bit farther in their journey. So don't give up. Definitely keep on trying. Definitely keep on trying to one up yourself. Learning more techniques, learning more things. Definitely buy the Araki book, and our Saturday AM Making Manga book will probably be out by next year, definitely. So I mean, keep an eye out for that, because that'll definitely help you. That'll definitely help you out. So I mean, there's a bunch of different resources out there to help you get to where you need to go. But if you do get in summer of manga, have patience, because I mean, it's like they said, it's not going to be, I'm done with this 20-page comic. Let me sign my contract so I can have my 500 chapter epic now. Like, that's not going to happen. So I mean, just lower your expectations in that regard. But definitely be patient, and I said this a while ago to somebody. Luck is opportunity meets oh man, what was it? Opportunity meets preparedness is luck. So I mean, just keep on trying to get better and better and better, and then once that opportunity comes, that's when you can strike, and hopefully everything works out for you.
Yeah, good plug-in with the books. We have Making Manga the Saturday AM way. That'll be out, and it's kind of like the Araki book, which I also recommend, but obviously now from our perspective and some other professionals in the industry today, not just Japan. I think Araki's will focus a little bit more on just Japan. Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud is another really good book.
Yes.
And then How to Draw Diverse Manga, which is another book of ours. Focus a little bit, there is some theory stuff in there, but it focuses a little bit more on the drawing side of things, but also kind of gives you an insight on who we are and how we see manga as well. So I definitely recommend those 4 books. You can pre-order How to Making Manga the Saturday AM way. So as soon as it comes out, you can get it. And links to all our books will be in the description. Again, if you guys enjoyed the video, like the video, subscribe, all of that. Austin, any parting words and any updates you want to let people know about? Anything, events, anything like that, or just what's going on?
Oh yeah, so as some of you may know, I am from Canada, so I will be at TCAF this year, Toronto Comics Arts Festival. A very prestigious festival. I'm glad to go back for Saturday. I was back there for 2024. I'm glad to be back for 2025. I was actually asked to be part of the LED Day, or the Libraries and Education Day on Friday, to do a panel about Manga 101. I may be asked to do a second panel. I'm not sure yet. But I will be there at 12 p.m. to 12:50 p.m. EST for TCAF. So if anybody is going, feel free to check it out. It's going to be an exciting time this weekend. I'll be there for Saturday AM's booth, probably in the publisher section. And yeah, that's basically it.
I'm sure you have pictures and get some fan stuff and all of that. I can't wait, man. I can't wait for it. There's a lot of stuff happening, and I think a lot of stuff will be announced at least halfway through next month. That some of which will blow people's minds, and it's not even all of it. There's still a bunch of other things. So, got a lot of things brewing. Wish us luck. Like, we've been at this over a decade. We're still small, but at the same time, we're making a very reasonable amount of noise in what we're doing, and still shocking people with what some of the things that we've already done, and the awards that we've won. Some of which, shout out to you, Austin. Thanks. And everybody's staff that helps make it happen. Joshua is a machine. But that's that's all we have for you guys for this episode of Making Manga. Unless anybody has any last words, it's Whyt Manga, Saturday AF, Saturday FM, Saturday AM, Making Manga, and we are